Hey guys, welcome to the Learning Tree. I'm Tree. Today we're going to be making some rice pilaf with some filet of fish mouginoise. Don't worry, mouginoise is just a fancy French word for a white cream sauce. So let me tell you a little bit about the ingredients that we're going to be using today before we get started. For the rice pilaf, the only thing that we're going to need is a couple cups of rice, some butter, onions, and water, or some chicken stock. I like to use chicken stock because it gives you a little bit more added flavor to it. And then for our fillet of fish, we're just going to use some shallots, mushrooms, chives, fish sauce, heavy cream, and wine. When it comes to wine, I always say that if you're going to use wine or liquor in your food, use what you would drink. I think it's best to use something you would drink because then you know the flavors of it. If you prefer to use a table wine, then I would go with this right here. It's called Carlo Rossi. Carlo Rossi. This is a relatively good wine to use in food if you don't want to use your expensive wine. They also have this in red, so if your recipe calls for red wine, you can use that as well. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so we're gonna get started with the rice pilaf because that's what's gonna take the longest to cook. The fish is only gonna take literally 5, maybe 10 minutes, if that. So we're gonna start by adding butter to our pot. As you can see, I'm using a relatively small pot because it's just me. So the ingredients are going to be for 1 to 2 servings. That's about it. So I'm putting about half a tablespoon to a tablespoon of butter in there. And I'm going to add the onions so we can begin sweating the onions. You want the onions to get translucent. You don't want them brown. You just want them translucent, so you want to be able to see through them almost. Okay? Once your onions are relatively translucent, you're going to add the rice in here. No water yet, no stock yet, just the onions, the butter, and the rice. So like I said, it's just me. So I'm only going to make a cup of rice. I don't need more than that. And we're going to mix the onions and the rice. You don't want to fry the onions, but you do want to mix it in there. And the average rule is that for every cup of rice, you double the water or the stock. That's the average rule. I personally know that one of my best friends, she does 1.25 cups of her water, and for her it comes out perfect. So you just have to play around with it. There's a little trick that sometimes helps, and that is once you have your stock or water inside, put the tip of your thumb, I believe. No, the tip of your index finger. Everyone's index finger from the knuckle to the tip of the nail is almost the same size. So if you take the tip of your finger and dip it in there, you want to touch the rice, but you want the liquid to come up to the knuckle almost. And that kind of gives you almost perfect rice. So we're going to bring this to a boil. And once it comes to a boil, we're going to go ahead and put it in the oven at 375 degrees. Yes, I put things in the oven because I cannot cook rice on top of the stove. I'm horrible at it. My daughter has reminded me numerous times how I cannot make rice. But this way it always comes out really, really good. Alright, so our rice is starting to come to a boil. We're going to go ahead and put the lid on it. And like I said, we're going to put this in the oven, 375 degrees, for about a good 30-45 minutes. Onto our fish. We're actually going to use some olive oil instead. I'm short, leave me alone. Instead of butter. Just 1 turn of the pan, enough to just coat the pan. You don't want to drown it in oil. And you want to let that get up warm. And this too is going to be really, really simple. So once that begins warming up, we're going to add the shallots. This is about a 1/4 cup of shallots in here, if that. Again, it's going to depend on how much fish you're cooking. So again, it's just me. I'm going to be making 2 fillets. You don't want it to toast. The key here is getting it translucent. We're going to go ahead and add the fish. I salted the fish with, I added salt and pepper to the fish. That's it. Not too much. So you're going to lay the fish on top of the shallots, and we're going to cover it with a little bit of aluminum foil. And we're going to go ahead and put it in the oven for just 4 to 5 minutes. All right, we're going to go ahead and take the fish out of the oven. We don't want to overcook it. It's been about 3.5 minutes. So, how perfect that looks. Simple. We're going to set that to the side. You want to cover it up because you don't want to lose any of the moisture. Please be careful and remember that you just took it out of the oven. I have a bad habit of doing that. I have scars all over my hands because of that. All right. We're going to add a little bit more butter to this because we want that creamy effect. And we're going to add the mushrooms in there so they can cook down a little bit. And the fish sauce. We're going to let the mushrooms cook down just a little tiny bit, and we're going to go ahead and add the white wine. If you have a gas stove, I would highly recommend either taking the pan off the stove and adding whatever liquor or wine you're going to add, or turn off the stove and then add your liquor and wine. The last thing you want is for the flames to catch that and just start a fire. So please either take it away from the fire or turn off the fire. Okay? We're going to let this wine reduce down just a little tiny bit. And we're going to go ahead and add some cream, heavy cream. And at this point, this is where it becomes your recipe. And what I mean by that is you're going to need to taste it and play with the flavoring from here on out. And if you've noticed, I haven't added any salt or pepper yet. Salt and pepper should always be added last to any of your recipes. Unless it's one of the main ingredients in the recipe, you should always add it last, because the salt, especially the salt is supposed to be used to enhance your flavors, not to give it flavor. It just brings out whatever natural flavor you have in there. So you always want to taste your food first, then add salt and pepper as needed. And again, remember, our fish sauce also had salt in it. It's good. I think wine makes everything taste good. We're going to add just a tiny pinch of salt to it. Perfect. I'm going to turn that off. Remove it from the heat. And we're going to pour it over our fish. Bad habits. And once our rice is done, I'll show you what this looks like, but just so that you can see it. So, once the rice is done, I'll be back and show you the finished product. So, here's our finished product. I had some broccoli left over, so I made some steamed broccoli. But we have our fillet of fish, our white rice, garnished with some chives, and some steamed broccoli. That is to die for. And my rice is awesome. So, I hope you learned something today. I hope you enjoyed this video. As usual, like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.